the Vic Feazell Show podcast, hosted by Vic Feazell and Jonathan Zimick. Sponsored by Moroso Wood-Fired Pizza, Pinewood Coffee Bar, and the law offices of Vic Feazell. Tell us about the confession.
Right. So looking at these two confessions, Otis's as well as Henry's. So Henry gave his on May 29th, 1984. And I can tell you, this thing's like 3 pages long, and it reads oh so perfectly. And one thing I can say just from looking at them right off the bat, these two confessions, this is post Orange Socks, and that one was written very well. It read so perfectly fine, and the details were a little funky, but reading this one, man, these details are spot on. And you can totally tell that the task force is in full bloom, and like they've perfected their method, because the points of corroborating evidence are just so perfect in this. The color of the car they were driving, the age is exactly what was taken from the body. These are perfect. These are masterpieces, Vic. I mean,
it's so perfect. It would make you think he did it.
Totally. It's hard to find anything in them that you can really pick apart.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I do see right off the bat in Henry's, he says, at the scene in the car was Otis, Henry, Frank, and Becky. And when we first started, you said Frank and Becky were in school, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, this was a weekend, though. This was Sunday.
Right.
This was a Sunday. But we have the school records to prove that we're in school in Jacksonville, Florida on Friday.
Right.
And they were back in school on Monday morning.
And this thing happened on a
Sunday.
So, woo! That's a lot of driving
evening.
to get back
on
to
a
school.
Sunday night. On a Sunday night, it was dark. They had already seen the movie. They're already driving back in the dark and ran out of gas. So this was Sunday evening. But wow, they were able to haul ass back to Jacksonville. We're going to have to look at a map and figure out how many miles that is. But
to be back in school.
Yeah, I drove to New Orleans from from Waco one time. And that was a long damn drive. I knew I didn't want to do it again. Although I have family that does it all the time. I don't like to. But there's just no way. I mean,
just no way.
Yeah, let's go kill a couple people. And by the way, we're going to have you little darlings back in in grade school by 8:30 Monday morning. And you're going to go to school and act like nothing ever happened, and the teachers are not going to be suspicious, and you're going to have your homework done, and your clothes are going to be clean, or else we'd all be turned into CPS. None of that happened. These kids were in school. We can absolutely prove it. And yet here's Otis saying that they were with him and Lucas when they killed Frank and Rita.
And as far as the school records and whatnot, that was from the wonderful job you and Jim Maddox did on what was later named, or was it totally named, the Lucas Report right off the bat?
Yeah.
Lucas Report.
The Lucas Report.
And that is like hundreds of pages.
Hundreds of pages of information. Yeah, we gathered all this information during the McLennan County Lucas Grand Jury, which was held on the top floor of the beautiful McLennan County Courthouse. It's one of the most beautiful buildings in the state, a historical building. Our commissioners and our county judge have been really good to keep it up.
Yeah.
To keep up the maintenance on it. They brought it back to its some of the history back, even to the point of they had to take out the water fountains. But it's a beautiful, beautiful courthouse. Now, I don't think they're going to have that grand jury room anymore.
Why not?
They needed another courtroom, so they're turning it into a courtroom. That's kind of sad, because there's been so much history in that grand jury room.
Yeah, man.
Beautiful room, stained glass ceiling, and on the back of it was even an old dormitory with 12 or 14 bunk beds in it. Because they used to sequester juries back in the old days.
Is that right?
And they would make them sleep in there. And that's back when only men were on juries. So they could all sleep in there. There were showers up there. When I was DA, we used that just to store files. Because nobody ever slept up there. But it would have made a good place to film a movie for a jail scene or something like that.
Well, that's cool. Isn't there also it's like a fallout shelter in the bottom of it too, right? remember seeing the fallout shelter signs all over
in the bottom of the courthouse. Yeah, it's a beautiful building. Yeah. Matter of fact, if you want to read Careless Whispers, the book about the Lake Waco triple murders by Carlton Stowers, he spends several pages describing the courthouse and telling about how it was built and when it was built and all of that. Yeah, it's a great facility.
And if you don't have the book, visit www.vicfeazell.com.
VicFeazell.com. Yeah, we will sell you
copies.
Used hardback because they don't make them anymore. Or if you want to order a paperback, you can just go to Amazon for that. I'll sign the hardbacks if we buy one, or we might have a contest and give some away.
Ooh.
Yeah. And if Truman will quit being such a grump, I'll get him to sign them. Truman Simons, I love that guy. We fight like brothers, but we work well together.
There you do.
Yeah.
There you do.
We've been called Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, but we can't agree on which is which.
I think you're more of the Doc Holliday.
I think so.
I love it. Well, with this confession, so like I said, they read so well. In the points are so perfectly made in this thing to where you can totally tell they've just got their system down. Those pieces of corroborating evidence are just so perfectly outlined. Oh, she was wearing a sweater. Here's the color of the sweater. Oh, this is the car. Here's the color of the car.
Best I can remember, that car was a blue Ford with a different top to it, cream-colored top like.
But one thing that I do have to say really pokes out, and this is in the last page of Henry's confession. He says, I have been shown pictures of the boy and the girl by investigators and identified them as the ones we killed. Furthermore, I also identified a picture of the car where we picked up the boy and girl. So he just admits that he's been shown the pictures, you know, so it's one of those I could totally see where they slide the pictures. Is this the car? Yep, that's it.
Right.
Is this the boy and girl? Yeah, that's
right.
them.
And we already know from the video confessions that we've watched that Boutwell did not follow any kind of proper law enforcement procedure on photo lineups.
Yeah.
He would just say, is this Henry? Is this it, Henry? Is that it, Henry? Instead of laying out 4 or 5 and saying, do you recognize any of these?
I'd sit and read the synopsis reports and all that stuff and get the information, you know. Then I would give it back to them. And they started clearing the cases that way. Say maybe I shot her, you know. And they said, no, that's not right, you know. Well, I know it has to be something else. So I would say, well, maybe I strangled her. And that wouldn't be right. So they said, well, no, that ain't right, you know. I said, well, maybe I stabbed her. And they said, oh, yeah, that's right now. That's right. I said, where did this happen at? I said, well, I think it was a bedroom. They said, no, it can't be the bedroom. And they said, where else could it possibly be? I said, well, maybe it's the living room. And that would be right, you know. So they'd write that down, you know, get it on tape.
They were wanting to give him the information to say, or they wouldn't have done it the way they did.
Yeah.
You know? Otherwise, Henry could have just sat down and said, yeah, we picked them up here. They were driving this car. We took them here. We did this. We did that. We did that. No. You go through, and this is just like Orange Socks. You go through the actual confession, and Henry's got it all wrong.
Yeah.
All wrong. And Boutwell keeps having to direct him and move him and direct him and move him. But the biggest problem is who all's in the car.
Yeah.
Who's in the car? You know?
Again, they say it was the 4 of them.
Say it's the 4 of them. And at one time, Lucas is saying I had nothing to do with it. At one time, Otis is saying I killed Rita. And then later, Henry says he killed Rita.
Who killed the girl?
I did.
Lucas said.
She causing too much trouble?
Yeah, she was causing too much trouble, so I just let her out and shot her.
Oh, okay, that'll do, Henry. We'll indict you. We'll convict you for this. The only problem is I had jurisdiction.
Right.
Yeah. Now, Georgetown had jurisdiction on Frank Key.
Right. So
I had
pinned that one on
jurisdiction.
Otis.
Yeah.
Right. So it was time for you to pick up the slack, Vic.
Yeah. And so I looked at this paperwork, you know, and people have asked me before, what bothered you about this? I can't put my finger on it, you know, because the confession itself makes sense.
Right. It's 3 pages of perfectly written narrative.
But then when we find, and I didn't know at that time that Frank and Becky were in school.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But I did know about the other confessions.
Okay.
About Otis and about the way it just stacked up. And it didn't make sense. That's why I asked Truman Simons, Truman, look into this for me. And he had actually talked to me about it too. He said, hey, I hear that the Rangers are sending one up here. Let me look at it. Because he would often do that. Yeah. Yeah. And I trusted Truman's opinion. He's a good law enforcement officer. Now, I didn't always agree with him, but I trusted his opinion. And
did Truman get the tip-off before you got the call from the Rangers? Did he know before?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, tell me about the phone call you got then from the Rangers on this. Give me the start from there.
Well, that would have been Bobby Prince calling me to say that he had one up in my county.
Okay.
And we got one in McLennan County. Henry has confessed to the murder of Rita Salazar, and we'd like for you to go ahead and get him indicted, and we'll bring him up for the plea. We'll all get our picture taken, be some good PR, and we'll be on our way.
Okay.
And I thought, cool, man.
Cool, man.
That sounds good. I'm talking to a Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool because I was pretty impressed with the Rangers then. Actually, when I was younger, I had wanted to be a Ranger.
Yeah.
I really did. You know, I started out
all
with
those
Austin.
Louis L'Amour books it
did.
Put that flavor in
Yeah.
mind.
I started out with Austin Police Department with that in mind, yeah. But went another direction.
And what happened at that point?
Well, that's when I had them pull the file and pull everything together. This confession and some of the paperwork had been mailed to us, or it got there shortly. Things were pretty busy always in the DA's office. And I looked at the paperwork, and it concerned me that there had been more than one confession. It concerned me that when Boutwell interviewed Otis Toole the first time, it's in the offense report. Toole does not remember who accompanied him on this particular offense, and Lucas does not admit being present. However, Lucas stated that Toole described the offense to him. It is believed by the investigating officers that Toole had an accomplice due to there being more than one victim.
Ooh.
But at this time, the second accomplice is unknown.
Okay.
But the offense is confirmed by Sheriff Jim Boutwell.
Right.
The offense. So he confirmed there was a murder. Well, everybody knew that. But it bothered me that they had already gotten a confession from Toole, and then Toole says Lucas wasn't there.
Right.
And then when they finally talked to Lucas, Lucas said he didn't know anything about that one.
Right.
All right. Then Boutwell goes back to Lucas, and then it was Otis Toole killed her.
Okay.
Well, by then, they've gotten Otis and Henry together, and they get to talk. Now, Otis is saying, no, Henry shot her, not me.
I'll take the boy. Henry got the girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they interview Henry later, and Henry goes, yeah, I shot the girl.
Right.
But it just seemed too much like spoon feeding, so that's why I asked Truman Simons to look into it.
Okay. And Truman, you said, was on loan from the sheriff's office, right?
Yes, he had been a former policeman, sergeant with the Waco Police Department, was their best homicide investigator. He quit the Waco Police Department over the Lake Waco triple murder after the police department closed the case and put it in the inactive file, cold case file. Sheriff Harwell had said, I'll let you work on it over here. So he quit. He was just a few months from retirement, maybe a year, and he quit so that he could continue pursuing the Lake Waco murder.
Wow.
And so, yeah, he had joined the sheriff's office, and then Sheriff Harwell assigned him to my office to help investigate the Lake Waco triple murders. And then from there, we went into other things. He just kind of stayed with my office investigating things that Sheriff Harwell wanted him to look at and the murders that we were working on that hadn't been solved yet.
Okay, cool. So Truman got onto this, and he felt funny about it too, so you had him digging around, right?
Yeah, Truman already felt funny about it, and for the same reason I did. Not just this case. We had been seeing Henry Lucas on TV so much.
Yeah.
You know, he's killed 100 women. He's killed 200. He's killed 300. He's killed 400. He's confessed to 600. And by then, at least me and Truman and anybody with any sense would have been saying, this doesn't sound right.
And this was like peak Henry season right now. This was peak.
Peak Henry season. He was confessing to something every day.
Oh, God.
Every day. Like I said before, they've been packing these murders in so tight that if we could eliminate one day, just say, here's some absolute evidence that Henry was in jail somewhere, or Henry was in a dentist chair, or Henry was selling scrap metal, or Henry was cashing a check.
Yeah.
Every day we confirmed would knock out a murder because they had them so tight. Yeah. So we were both suspicious because of that. And that's when I asked Truman to look into it, see what he could find.
Right. And that's when he started looking into all the computer systems, and they're all coming back denied and all that.
Yeah, that's when he went down and accessed the TCIC and NCIC to find Henry's criminal records. And shortly after that, that's when the access was denied. We couldn't get on. And that had never happened before. And it happened on the state level and on the national level, which scared us. State level, we could understand. National level, how they have that much power. That scared us. It made us think we've gotten in over our head. That's when we decided, shortly after that, that we should contact the Attorney General's office.
Right.
State Attorney General Jim Maddox. Yes.
And we talked about it in your in the Vic Feazell Henry Lee Lucas narrative episodes.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yes.
So if you haven't heard that story yet, listen to that.
Go back and
episodes.
listen. Yeah.
So the Salazar confession came in. You got the file. You don't like it. It doesn't fit. You've got your investigator Truman, or the gentleman on loan. He's looking into it. Doesn't make sense to him. So what happens at that point?
We decided just to not do anything. Just keep looking into Henry Lucas is what we did.
Okay.
But I didn't arrange to have Henry brought up. I never did anything to facilitate that guilty plea.
Right.
I never got him indicted.
Okay.
I never presented it to the grand jury. And I got a couple more phone calls. I don't remember if I talked to him or if I just got messages like, when are you going to do something on this? We're ready to plead Henry Lucas guilty on this.
This is from the Rangers?
From the Rangers, yes. I got calls from Bob Prince, and I got calls from a guy named Lefty Block.
His real name was Lefty?
I think so. That's what he called himself. He was a supervisor over Prince, I think, and he called one time too.
Poncho and Lefty, is that what they called them?
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. And then after we were denied access on the computer, then Truman was talking, I told you before, to Carlton Stowers. Right. Carlton Stowers was the author who was working on the book about the Lake Waco murders. Carlton Stowers was friends with Hugh Ainsworth. Mm-hmm. Carlton Stowers told Truman Simons, oh my God, you need to talk to Hugh Ainsworth.
Yes.
Because he had spoken to Hugh recently, and Hugh had showed Carlton all the information he had amassed on Henry Lee Lucas that knocked out dozens, maybe 50, maybe 100 of the confessions right off the bat. Because Hugh had been investigating Lucas for quite a while, for at least a year, and had gone all over, had interviewed him in Georgetown, mm-hmm. but had flown all over the country interviewing people who had known Henry's relatives, and then people in Jacksonville, the people at the scrap metal place, the guy at the store. Hugh interviewed all those people. Matter of fact, Hugh's the one who helped Higginbotham and Parker McCullough put that evidence together about Henry. Yeah. And then Boutwell comes along, gets Henry to do his tape recording, say, no, that was all fake. Yeah. I paid him to forge my name, which is bullshit. Plus we got the school records that show that Becky and Frank were in school Friday and on Monday. Yet, according to Henry's confession and Otis's confession, they were in the car with them on Sunday night.
Yes.
When Rita and Frank were killed.
Not so much. Not so much.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so comes to your office, you basically throw a freeze on it while you investigate it. And maybe, to loop back to what you said earlier, maybe that's why they never did anything with the Otis's confession either. Maybe they just said, well, if Feazell's not moving forward, we can't move forward.
Well, they indicted him. I know that. They indicted Otis, but I don't know if he ever pled to it. I don't know if it's still closed as far as Otis goes.
Interesting.
But I do know they indicted him. Now, Otis gave his confession on October the 6th, 1983, which implicated Henry, saying that Henry shot the girl. Now, remember before, when Boutwell talked to him the first time, he said that he had shot the girl. But now, Boutwell's got him around to saying Henry shot the girl. And this was on October 83. And then it's like not until May 84 that Boutwell has him in a helicopter, and Henry goes, there it is right there. That's where I dumped that Salazar girl.
Right. Plenty of time in between to get them together and
finish
out the story.
Plenty of time. Plus, as we get down to the end of this, like Paul Harvey, we will tell the rest of the story.
Yes.
How do we know? How do we know that Henry and Otis did not kill this boy and girl?
Right.
How do we know that? And we're also going to interview Michael Jared. He was the young assistant DA who actually 30-something years later solved this case. But we'll get into how he did that.
So looking at the confessions, Vic, what are the main corroborating pieces of evidence that they harp on? From what I can tell from Henry's confession, it's the color of the car, the Frank Keyes brothers'
car. The color of the car, but remember they showed him a picture of the car.
Right, they did.
Yeah. And I signed the back of it to prove that this is the car that I saw him in. I signed the back of the picture.
Right.
What?
And then location of the body, which he identified via helicopter.
Oh, yeah. And after they had driven him around all over the place and talked to him about it for over a year, you know? I mean, and here's Otis's confession in 83, October 83. Then they get Henry to confess in May of 84. And then he shows May 29th of 84. That would have been the day after the helicopter ride.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
there's those two. Then it's the sweatshirt you said that she was holding in her
sweater.
Hands. And the specific color of it, too.
It was white, a white sweater. Yeah, so Henry identified that she was holding a white sweater and that somebody had taken her purse, that she had had a purse.
Okay. And then also kind of a fringe one, but also he said that he shot him with a .22, which both Frank and Rita were both killed with a .22. Mm-hmm. So those are your 5 points. So you as the district attorney getting this confession, you see, oh man, sweater, yeah, she had the sweater. Oh, the car color, that's great. Oh, a .22, that's what they're killed with. Oh, the location, well, good Lord. Mm-hmm. So even with all that, it still felt funny to you.
It did, because when I'm looking at Henry's May 29th confession, and he says, I can't remember the year exactly. Well, you know, he always had a problem with that. He was saying that this murder happened in 79 when it was actually 78.
Right.
But me, Otis, Frank, and Becky picked this boy and girl up around 11 p.m. Well, it just bothered me to think about those two little kids in the car.
Yeah.
You know, that somehow it just did not compute. If you're talking about some B horror movie, yeah maybe. But in real life, you know, no, these were just regular little kids. And they were in school that Friday and that Monday. Now, I didn't know that at the time. We figured that out later after Mike Ferry got on this, pulling up records and everything.
Okay.
But or possibly could have been Ainsworth that found the school records. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask you about that.
Yeah.
But it just bothered me that he said Frank and Becky were in the car with him.
Yes.
So, and he gave some pretty good detail. They were standing in front of a two-tone blue car. And they said they needed a ride to the next town. They were out of gas. And then again, that is so sad. Me and Frank was holding the girl, and Becky was holding the door so she couldn't get out. Well, how old were these kids? They were little.
Yeah, they're little kids.
Little kids. And then I shot the girl on the access road.
Right.
And like I said, if this had been the only confession, if this was the only murder, I may not have been so suspicious. But knowing that he was confessing to hundreds of these things, I just wanted to make sure. He puts in his confession, none of us had sex with the girl. Well, he knew she hadn't been sexually abused by the autopsy report.
Right. Then it also says that Otis took Frank's billfold, which they did find the billfold not too far from where they found him, too.
Right. And Henry says, I've been shown pictures of the boy and girl.
Right.
You know, here you are again, shown pictures by investigators. I can't remember that. I can't read that. Henderson and Ranger Clayton Smith. I knew Clayton Smith.
Come on, Boutwell. We can't read your writing. Because remember, he's the one who wrote this confession out. Henry just signed it.
So I saw their pictures and I identified them as the same ones killed. And then on May 24th, we were flying back to Georgetown from Kaufman, and I showed Ranger Smith the location where the girl was killed. I also identified pictures of the car where we picked up the boy and girl. So there you have it. A lot of good detail.
Yeah.
You know, and if Henry didn't do this case, well, then was he psychic? Boutwell said he was psychic. You know, if Henry didn't do it, he must have been psychic.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but if you haven't listened to what we've already put out there about orange socks, go back and listen to the orange socks. We have 4 episodes about orange socks, because in that we take that confession apart, and you get to see how Sheriff Boutwell led and would even get mad at Henry when he couldn't get the answers that Boutwell wanted.
Yeah.
And he would even tell him, no, that's not right, Henry. No, that's not right. Well, it wasn't down by San Antonio, Henry. And he'd get so frustrated. And remember, then he said, well, it was at a culvert near Georgetown.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now I've got that piece of information. So then it's always at a culvert near Georgetown. But then when the confession is written out, it's written out, well, I dumped her by a culvert in Georgetown. And not all the guessing that went before.
Yeah.
And then another thing with Otis Toole. Otis Toole didn't even know how to read or write.
Correct.
So there's no way this is Otis's writing. He did not know how to read or write. Do we know where Henry was in November of 78?
From what I believe, he was in Jacksonville, Florida still.
With still in Jacksonville, yeah.
And remember, Otis's confession, this is signed in Jacksonsville, Florida. So they went out and got his confession in Jacksonville.
They went out there. Yeah, it was Chief Dennis Lukey. From the Hewitt Police Department. I knew Dennis. Okay. Dennis helped us with some with the lake murders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he's the one who got the call and went out looking for the body while it was still dark. It was 5 a.m. I arrived at the scene at approximately 5:20 a.m. and I saw the body of the victim laying on her back on the side of the northbound access road on I-35. At the mile marker 325. A Mr. Lewis White, who lived near there, had called at 2:20 a.m. That's when he heard the gunshots. He heard the gunshots and he saw a vehicle on the access road of I-35 that had stopped and then left. And then Chief Lukey stated that at 3:10 a.m., that's when he actually found the body in its present location and called Patrolman Lewis to come out and start the crime scene investigation.
Yep.
So 2:20 a.m. was when the gunshots were fired. In Hewitt, Texas, Frank and Becky were in school in Jacksonville, Florida at 8:30 a.m. the very next day.
Yep.
So, no, not the very next day, that day.
Yeah, the same day.
2:20 a.m. Okay. So no way. And so that bothered me enough to want to look into it. Now, I could have gone, man, I'm busy. I got murder cases to try. I was working on the Lake Waco murder then.
Right.
I was getting ready to leave town on a change of venue trial that would last 6 weeks. And we were also doing all of this stuff. So it would have been real easy for me to go, oh, yeah, let's just get this over with. Mm-hmm. Get them up here. Let's do the plea. Let me get my picture in the paper, and they can go their way. And, Jonathan, none of this may have ever come to light. Because who would have been looking at the DNA? Who would have looked at it? Rita Salazar, this case would have still been a closed case.
Yes.
Closed. Everything gone if I had let Henry plead to this. Thank you for listening to the Vic Feazell Show podcast. And visit us at www.vicfeazell.com for more information. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Drive laid back and lower your speed, 1877 with Vic.